got me plotting, got me thinking, how can I come up and get myself a Lincoln? Got me plotting, got me thinking, how can I come up and get myself a Lincoln out of Continental?
Hey, this is Tony Boss Bolin coming to you from the Lincoln Addict Podcast.
Hey, it's Jason, ODB, also known as the Lincoln Addict, hitting you with another episode, finally, of Lincoln Addict Podcast. I believe this is episode 22, and we're, of course, in April of 2022. So thanks to everyone that continues to come back. Certainly appreciate that, and thanks for everyone that continues to ask, hey, when is a new episode going to drop? So I've been trying to do a better job of staying on top of these. However, it's been a busy year already with a lot of house stuff and things, so balancing all of that. Before we jump in, I do want to thank our title sponsors, including Devious Customs. If you're a purist or you're looking to customize and resto-mod a car, check out DeviousCustoms.com. He has parts including air suspension, but he also has parts to replace parts that may fail on your car, like the window switches and so much more. So Jeff is one of the leading customized shops out there that's putting out parts that can help, again, someone that wants to keep it more old school or someone that wants to do it new school. So DeviousCustoms.com. Thank you to Colorado Custom Wheels for the continued support. Michael and team, I would put money down. They're the best in the business. You can go to cccyclewheels.com, or you can also go to Colorado Custom with no S, coloradocustom.com. That's the easier site to go to. It's the same company. You can, of course, contact them. That email will land over in Michael's lap. If you go to coloradocustom.com right now, you can check out some of the premium wheels that they offer under All Wheels, and you'll see that they do make the Lincoln replica wheels. So that's what I'll be running on my car. I love these wheels. They have a couple different styles and how they can make them, and he'll make sure that you get the right offset. He sold, I'm sure, well over 20, 30 sets of these. Let them know how they can help. All right, so this episode, I did some deep diving into a topic that I was going to post about. And then I thought to myself, I had so much time invested in kind of just digging around, trying to find facts, putting together a post. I said, let me get this out as an episode. Talk about Roy Rogers Lincoln. It did sell this year. We'll talk about some of the history of that car. And for those that don't know, Roy Rogers, he was an American singer, actor, television host. And, he goes back to being born in 1911. And then he passed, unfortunately, in 1998. But for anyone that was into like Westerns and all of that stuff, you would have known him. I'm sure some of the old school listeners would have known him as well. Really kind of just before my time. But the name I know from the Lincoln world, just haven't seen different posts on sites and people that, brought up his name tied to this yellow Lincoln, which we'll talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about this episode. Probably won't be too long, but I had to kind of draw the line in the sand for myself and say, damn it, I need to get this episode out because I've been working on a couple of other episodes. So there are some things that have been happening in the Lincoln world, including a record price this year for a Lincoln Continental convertible that we know of from the 60s. So that's going to be an upcoming episode, and I've got a few other folks on the hook. So I've kind of been storyboarding those, trying to kind of flush out how I want those episodes to go. Bottom line is trying to get out more content. But as we get started, for the longtime listeners, you'll know that I like to kind of go through the normal Lincoln stuff, and I'll start with the previous episode recap. Got to thank Nick Griotte from Griotte's Garage. Man, what a fun episode. I mean, his car is kind of one of a kind, right? It's has that modern look, or that OG original style look. Not too crazy, but of course under the hood is where you really get a chance to see the things take shape with it. Just a beautiful car. I've seen the car before in some of the Griotte's Garage videos, which, by the way, they've been doing a fantastic job putting out social media content and things like that. But of course, rich history there with his family in the automotive scene and the automotive world. But for him to want to sit down and talk Lincolns for a while and some other stuff, which, by the way, I hope that you learn some things from the perspective of detailing. I love this stuff. I love kind of doing a deep dive, so to speak. However, for whatever reason, I've always kind of been a little, do I want to go out there and mess with my own car? But since then, I have used some Griot's Garage products, and I'm very, very impressed. I've actually went out and bought some as well. And, man, I'm just super stoked. I've used them on my 65 Lincoln Continental, the red car. And, man, car looks fantastic. It made my life a little bit easier, a little bit less stress, too, after watching some of their videos and sitting down to talk with Nick. If you haven't had a chance and you just found us, most of you are probably on an iPhone, it's probably going to roll to the next episode. Go back and listen to the previous episode. Hopefully all of them as well. You can go back. And if you're on an Android device, kind of the same deal. If you're on Podbean or one of those different apps, you'll be able to go back and listen as well. But thank you again to Nick from Griot's Garage. Would love to sit down with him more in the future. I do have a lot of photos of his car that he had sent to me. Now, Fuel Curve, which that amazing site, they did a feature, and that's where a lot of those photos kind of reside at. But more than likely, I'm sure you've seen the video. There's one that I mentioned with him that kind of went viral of it pulling out of a garage space, and you kind of hear the rumble of the engine, and that video has been shared, I don't know, countless times all around the world. So you probably have seen it on social media. But tip of the cap to Nick and to his awesome family for what they do for the automotive community. Later this year, whether it's the holidays or it's a happy born day, as I always say, hit up Griot's Garage, GRIOTS Garage.com, and order some products. Check it out. They do sponsor a lot of different car shows. I've seen goodie bags before with their products in them, and he talked about some of the newer technology stuff that's coming out. But again, I've been watching some of the videos on their YouTube and their Instagram, and it makes me feel a little bit better about getting out there and doing the damn thing. All right, so I kind of talked about on this episode already, just kind of giving a breakdown. We'll talk about Roy Rogers Lincoln and some of the history behind it. You might be amazed at maybe how many miles he put on it and maybe how much he bought it for, and then how much it ultimately sold for earlier this year. All right, so next I got some Lincoln Life updates, okay? So here I'll talk a little bit about some of the things I've been dealing with, but I want to thank Steel Rubber. I cannot say enough about this amazing company, STEELE, rubber.com. If you go there, you can, of course, from that homepage, select the year car, for instance. So I'm going to go down here and select 1965. I'm going to click on make, and then I'm just going to hit L. That'll take me right to it. I'm going to hit enter. There's two styles to pick from, convertible or sedan. Let me hit convertible, and then boom, I'm going to be presented with 39 products for a 65 Lincoln Continental. Now, you will see some of these prices are not super cheap, right? These products are made to last, and I guarantee if you run these, more than likely they'll never have to be changed again for the life of this dang car that you own, right? There's all kinds of new stuff that they continue to add, including the heater and AC gasket set. It's a 23-piece set. And a lot of these prices are not too bad overall because you can go to the other guys and you can get a product. And I can tell you right now, I've seen horror stories from people saying they do not like the other guys. So get out there, STEELE rubber.com. What I did is created like a little spreadsheet, and I wrote down everything that I would need in that spreadsheet, right? So copy, paste, all the pricing. And I just started checking things off the list over the course of time. Hey, do I need bumper or hood bumpers? Do I need door gasket set? So on and so forth. And I will check back on the website, and they'll add things like now they have the brake pedal pad, okay? Not a bad price out there either. So just know Steel Rubber is going to continue to support the Lincoln community as long as we reach out to them and purchase the stuff that we need. So steelrubber.com. All right, so the Lincoln Life updates. I've been enjoying the two cars that I have. Coming out of the cooler area or the cooler time of year in Florida is like December, January, February. But now that we're in spring, it's making me want to drive the cars a lot more. I will tell you, it is a lot of fun just getting out there, especially when it's the humidity's low and the weather's nice. Earlier this year, I took the 65, I put it on a trailer on Friday night. I could have drove it down, but I did have to bring some other stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be rolling solo. I put the car in a trailer and I took it down to a show called Relaxin' on the Ranch. All right. And I did a video for that show, but it was on the Our Lifestyle Podcast YouTube channel. So if you want to see a little bit of behind the scenes that doesn't 100%, fall into the category of Lincoln Addict, you can go on YouTube and type in Our Lifestyle Podcast and Relaxin' on the Ranch. Okay. That Friday night, the family helped me. I drove the car on the trailer, strapped it down early Saturday, drove down to the Lake Wales area, and took the car off the trailer, put the top down, cruised it in this beautiful venue that they have access to, and parked the car, and so many people enjoyed seeing it. Now, I actually had an opportunity to DJ the event, so I was kind of a stone's throw away DJing the entire day. I check in on the car periodically. Everything was good. So far, like I said, everything has been great. I can't thank Robert enough for selling the car. Now, if you go on Lincoln Addict Podcast YouTube channel or just Lincoln Addict, you'll see that I did another video recently speaking. Basically, I was doing a cold start with the car to kind of show people how nice this car starts, even if it's been sitting, say, 2-3+ weeks. And I wanted to do a video to kind of show the top going down. I often get asked different questions or things that I wouldn't think of to do a video of, and somebody was like, hey, can you kind of show a video from your perspective of the top going down? Like, what's it look like when you're sitting in the car? And, of course, when you watch these videos, everybody kind of turns around because it's the cool thing. You want to look at the top going down, right? With the latches being undone, boom, after the deck lid's up, the top goes in the trunk, and then boom, it goes down. So then the deck lid just comes down, right? So I'm trying to do more content there, even if I'm not able to sit down and record an episode here. So just know I'm going to continue to do that. I did one not too long ago talking about the tilt column in the car. Before I got this car, I knew that I was going to have an opportunity to talk about some unique things, right? Some different features, some videos that I've never seen on YouTube. And that's what I've kind of been able to do. Heck, one person even chimed in and said, hey man, thanks for doing the tilt column video on the 64 Lincoln. It helped me fix mine. I had one vacuum line that wasn't on where it should have been, and you showed me the video and I saw where it needed to go, and boom, mine works now. It's never worked in 10 years or whatever it was. So hey, that's what this podcast is about. If we can help someone, a little bit of knowledge, steering someone in the right direction on where to go, that's what this Lincoln life is about. And really just trying to carry on the tradition of the LincolnForum.net. I still always encourage people to sign up there. Now, a lot of the forums, whether it be C10 forums, full-size Chevy forums, or in this case, the LincolnForum.net, a lot of that stuff has went by the wayside because social media has been on the rise, right? So you have groups like Lincoln Addict on Facebook where people can post, ask questions, get help. And then, oh, by the way, over the years, those groups have enhanced where you can search those groups. So let's say you're looking for information about a power steering pump. You just go on Facebook, Lincoln Addict, boom, search, there's your answer. The cool thing about the Lincoln Forum that I always like to remind people is you can do the same thing with the search, but there are photos, very similar to Facebook, and there's a lot of good documentation. So if you're having a problem with your car, yeah, check Facebook groups as well, but also check the LincolnForum.net. It's free to sign up for a username and password, and I can tell you I've bookmarked so many different articles out there, and I have them under my favorites tab, and then under favorites I have Lincoln's, and then of course I have different things like engine, electrical, so on and so forth. And on the Safari browser, through my Mac computer, whenever I go under bookmarks, I can actually kind of put a note. So if I go to bookmark a website, and let's say I want to put like a little description of what that link's for, then I can easily go back and find it in the future. But I say all that kind of to rewind here. Just with Lincoln Life in general, I have been able to typically find an answer to what I'm looking for through either the LincolnForum.net or, of course, Facebook. Now, I'm also very fortunate because I've got access to the fine folks, Blair and Teresa, of course, Chris Dunn, Kelly at Old Lincoln Parts, and just all of these resources here. I've continued to say that if you need parts rebuilt, look no further than Blair Farmer. You can reach out to me, Lincoln Addict Podcast at gmail.com, and I'll do my best to get you his information. Blair does get a lot of calls, so he screens them because, sure, most of them are trying to get him to extend his car warranty on his 68 Lincoln. But if you leave a message for Blair, he'll get back to you. But I say all that again with the Lincoln Life updates because, these cars, I constantly see people going, man, I got my dream car, but it broke down. Hey, it's in its natural habitat. It's on a trailer, so on and so forth. And hey, I've been there. I've broken down. I've talked about it. I kind of almost broke down in the red car. The starter was wanting to stay engaged, and it happened to me one time shortly after I bought the car. I thought the one side of the solenoid was a little loose. I tightened it back in 2021 and didn't have a problem until recently. Went to take my friend's parents on a cruise. It was his dad's birthday, 74, and his mom had been wanting to also go on a quick cruise. Well, that day, I should have known something wasn't right when I started the car. I kind of could tell it didn't want to fire, but on the third turn, it did. Well, pulled the car out, let it sit a little while, and then when I went to leave, it kind of did the same thing, and the starter wanted to stay engaged. Of course, you can't turn the car off then, which is a big no-no. You don't want to get out of the car with it running. We've talked about that public service announcement. But in this case, you have no choice, okay? And it's a dangerous situation. You got to flip the door open. Well, first you got to pop the hood if it's not popped. Flip the door open, run around to the passenger side, push the little lever to allow for the hook to come undone, to open the hood, to then pull off one of those two leads on the solenoid, right? I think you have to pull off one, not both, but I end up pulling both of them off. So it should have been assigned to, just change the solenoid. But I told him I was coming over. I go over there, turn the car off, talk to him a little bit. We go for a ride. It wants to stay engaged again. Okay, not good. So I said, you know what? The car's started now. Let me take him for a quick cruise. I pull down their super long driveway, and I can see there's no power to the gauges. I know something's not right. I'm like, you know what? I know it's the solenoid at this point. I'm just going to take him on a quick cruise, get him back, go home, and fix it. That's what we ended up doing. The car did stall one time. It did start right back up. The starter wanted to stay engaged. Again, I was getting a little frustrated because I hate hearing that sound with the starter wanting to be engaged after the car's running. And you turn the key off, and guess what? The car doesn't want to turn off. So I did come right home, and I spent less than 10 minutes. I had the solenoid changed to one that I had on the shelf, an old school one. A lot of people will tell you the new school solenoids are crap. I don't know. I've never cut into one. I don't know the truth behind it, but we all know that most things today aren't made. It's going to make me sound old. They're not made like they used to, okay? They ain't made like they used to be, all right? So I did have an old solenoid off a previous car that I knew was good. I said, you know what? Instead of me running up to the store, let me just try to see if this fixes it. Well, as soon as I changed it and tightened everything and kind of did a quick overview and was like, yep, everything's good. Turning the key, boom, I knew it was fixed because as soon as I turned the key, you see the low fuel warning indicator. If that works on your car, when you turn that key, that red light turns on. So I immediately knew the car fires, knock on wood like it always does, and then boom, I had power to all the gauges. But I say that because that was an easy fix, Some people might be driving and they break down and they go, oh man, I'm gonna have to change the engine. I want to do an LS or a Coyote. Hey, I get it if you want the more power. Maybe you just got the money and you want to update it. But Chris Dunn and other people have reminded me, Blair and Teresa, John Cashman, I'm sure Kelly at Old Lincoln Parts as well. When folks used to drive these cars, okay, some drove them every day, some didn't. Some drove them on the weekends, whatever. They drove these cars all the time. They didn't overheat back then. They started, sure, did they eventually get to a point where they had a hiccup where you got to change the points? Absolutely. Whether you got to change the solenoid, the battery, this, that, that's normal maintenance. And these cars are 61, I think it's 61 years old now. So it's, it's the inevitable. Like, things are going to happen. Now, it's a little bit easier for me to say, I sometimes think mentally, because I do have, Tony's great at what he does, and Blair and Teresa, and, I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I want to fix something if there is an issue. But just know, with Lincoln Life, you're going to run into issues. You're going to break down, okay? My suggestion is have a friend that has a tow truck, or get AAA. That's what I've got. Now, of course, I do have access to a trailer, but, if you're out on a Sunday drive with a family and you break down, it is frustrating. It can be, but just to make the best of it. And just know, do some preventive maintenance as well, okay? I try to look at things and go, man, is there anything on this old car that I could do now? Maybe I could throw an extra set of points in the glove box. Oh, if it's got Pertronics, all right, I'm good. If it doesn't, maybe I go ahead and invest. I've told you guys before, I put Pertronics on my 64 blue car, and the thing, knock on wood, has been fantastic, okay? No issues. And you will run across people still that go, since Pertronics has started made in Mexico, it's no good anymore, and this. And I even called them and asked them, like, hey, was there like a shift 20 years ago? And they're like, dude, the products are fine. I got on my car, no issues. So, again, try to do some of those things. Now, if you truly want to have an LS engine, dare I say, or a Coyote, or you want to just switch to a 460, or whatever you want to do, I mean, hey, do it. I mean, I'm not going to ever tell you not to. I think that stuff is cool. I've seen some really nice Coyote swaps. I know LS swaps are super popular because they're affordable and there's all kinds of power and all that stuff. Hey, I've got nothing against it. And I'm sure the guy or lady that has broken down a ton and has invested a lot of money in their car, they're probably they're going to get to a certain point where they're frustrated. And they go, you know what, I'm just going with the modern engine. But I have seen people put modern engines and still have leaks like no tomorrow that they can't remedy, So every engine's going to always have something, but whatever you do, know that Lincoln Life will sometimes get you, but just keep on pushing on and try to enjoy what you got. So, again, Lincoln Life updates this week from me, ODB, the Lincoln Addict, brought to you by Steel Rubber. Visit STEELE rubber.com. You can find awesome products. You can also contact them, and I believe if you order something the first time, you'll automatically be added to their mailing list. You can go to catalogs, though, on their site, and you can do an on-demand catalog, universal catalog, marine, or RV catalog. And what's pretty cool is when you click on demand, that's where you'll put in information, and I think they'll still mail it to you. So pretty cool stuff. SteelRubber.com. All right, so one thing that I usually hit on is Lincoln sales. So any kind of cars I'm helping to sell, but I also started talking about trends recently that we're seeing in the market. Now, me personally, I've tried to slow down a little bit on pushing cars. I think it's great. I do still have that at Lincoln Continental Sales on Instagram, and I think that's a great outlet for folks. I've seen the followers jump, I think over 2,000, so thank you very much. Don't do it necessarily for that, but I try to do it to help someone if they've got a nice car and they want to push it, or they want to sell it or punt it, then, hey, let's get it out there on the market, right? There's plenty of different resources like Bring a Trailer website, eBay, and others where you can find your dream car. But for me personally, I'm sure anybody out there that's ever sold anything on social media like Facebook Marketplace, or maybe you're in sales, you kind of know how this goes, where oftentimes, people do want something, but maybe they don't have the funds, or their significant other hasn't blessed it, and things like that. And what I found since 2019 is I've been able to move a lot of cars for people, like whether it be buying one or selling one, right? And I love when that happens. But there's often, 10 or 20 people in between that one sale that they're like, hey, can you send me all the information? I'm a serious buyer. Can you get on the phone? I want to pick your brain. I want to do all this stuff. And that stuff, listen, I totally understand, right? I pick people's brain over the course of time, but I'm just at a point where I don't have the time to invest. I'm trying to do this podcast, our lifestyle podcast, balance my normal job. I got family. I got my son. He's 16. And, oh, by the way, go to car shows everywhere and, just different things, right, that I want to do. So the Lincoln Continental sales is an outlet for someone to go, hey, I want to list my car as a classified on there. This is what it takes. They reach out to me, and then I can post it. I've been trying to post a little bit of the trends, too. Some of the things that we're seeing, right? I posted a car earlier this week where I said, hey, this one sold for $52,000 some odd dollars, a yellow. Ironically enough, it was a yellow convertible 61. And so again, check it out, Lincoln Continental Sales on Instagram, and I'll continue to post stuff there. Now, we are continuing to see the market jump with these cars, right? I think overall, the entire industry has seen an uptick in classic cars, whether it be trucks or cars. Now, if you go to the Hagerty app, okay, now I have Hagerty Insurance. I'm not a paid spokesperson by them. I do love the service that I get from them, but if you go to, like on an iPhone, for instance, and you download Hagerty, I can type in 1965 Lincoln Continental, and what it's going to do is it's going to give you some options. So a 65 base. So if you select, let me select that. So it's got 4-door convertible or 4-door sedan. It's got the 4-barrel, 430, both 320 horsepower according to this, right? So you select the convertible. It says average value, $57,000. And then it has 4 different values. So $103K for concourse, $77K for number 2, excellent. Number 3, good condition, $57,000. So that's where you get that top number that they display. And then fair condition is $25,000. And then, of course, they've got a caveat that said plus 10% for factory AC. So I think I've talked about it in the past. It was under $1,000. I think it was $400 to $500 to add factory AC. It was not one of those kind of what I call RSTLNE, like on Wheel of Fortune. It wasn't a given. You did have to add that feature. However, many of the cars that I've seen have had it, right? So, but you would bump that up 10% in any of those price guide numbers. But what I'm continuing to see, again, is what we're seeing throughout these different auctions and the market in general, is that the classic cars are hot right now, especially trucks. So my suggestion to everyone is, don't stress out saying, hey, I'm never going to get one of these cars. I want to get one. Now, granted, are the prices going up? Absolutely. Prices are kind of going up for everything, housing, you name it. But just look out, whether it's Lincoln Continental Sales or some of the other places that I mentioned, because these cars pop up. Unfortunately, someone passes away, or in the case of the car that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes with Roy Rogers, it gets moved on, right? I mean, times change and museums change and these cars come up for sale. We had Mark Evans on, and Mark had a fantastic story of how he acquired his, 63 Lincoln Continental. I mean, just a great story, but he'll tell anyone, he missed out on a couple that he was like feeling like, damn, man, am I really going to get what I want? And he kept plugging away and he found something. Now, granted, he's had a couple hiccups and he'll tell you that, and he's mentioned some of those. But I do think that he's in a good place now and he's happy with what he's got. So just know, although a lot of these cars, they didn't manufacture a lot of these, especially the convertibles, if you're persistent and you're looking to really get one, something, you'll end up with something. Now, I know Tony Ball's bowling. Speaking of cars for sale, he's going to have a 65, an old, I'd say like a 90s custom that's going to be for sale. It came out of California, and it's got some things by today's standards we would definitely say are dated, okay? But it's got a lot of good bones to it. It also could easily be resto-modded or put back to original, but it's a car that definitely, again, has good bones to it. It's got some weird interior things, a little bit of leopard print around the dash, and just some weird things, again, from the late 90s. I'm not saying that was cool then, but he's going to have one for sale. What he likes to do, and I love this about what Tony does, is if he's going to sell a car, he'll put in the time and the money to do those low-lying items that have to be done. He's the type of guy that's not going to, go, I'm going to sell you this car, and it's going to burn down when you drive it out of the driveway. That's not who Tony is. He recently sold a killer wagon. He sold a couple wagons, and one was a Ford, one was a Chevy, and both of the guys are like ecstatic. It was a fair price. There was meat on the bone in terms of being able to refresh these cars, clean them up some. One guy lives by me. It was a Country Squire wagon, I think, and the guy's an old surfer, and he loves it. So just know, again, kind of getting back to that main topic, there are these these cars are still out there. You'll get one down the road, and don't rule out, like, you go, hey, I want a convertible. Okay, I did back in the day too, but in 08 or 09 when I got my first sedan, I went with the sedan because I said, you know what, it's going to be a little overwhelming. I knew from researching, but I was like, if I get a convertible, that's a whole nother monster, right? There's more relays, there's the top, there's the hydraulic lines, there's all of that stuff. So, feel like you can become friends with someone that maybe has one of these cars and help him or her tinker a little bit, learn some stuff, search the forums, search the social media groups, understand what you're getting into, because, when you get one of these and it breaks down, you don't want to be like, oh, that's it, I'm pulling the motor, because you don't always have to go to that extreme. So, again, I can see why people want the modern stuff, but 100%, I'll tell you, it's not a necessity. So, those are some of the Lincoln sales updates I wanted to mention to you. Maybe there's a grain of salt in there that you can run with. Maybe it was in it one ear, one out the other ear. But stay tuned to Lincoln Continental Sales. If you're on Instagram, you can also turn on post notifications. If you've got a car that you want to sell, please send me a direct message. I do charge a small fee because what I end up doing is I kind of do a clean write-up on it, and I post it not only there, but then I'll cross-promote it over on Lincoln Addict, and we get a ton of views. Again, it's not why I do this, but easily we're over 100,000 views in a week. If I post the right amount of stuff, the views come in. People love these cars, so constantly have people asking me, hey, do you know any for sale? Constantly have people asking, hey, can you help me sell it? So for now, that's the balance. I'll be posted on Lincoln Continental Sales. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is the Lincolns in the movies. Okay. Now, this is a funny one. Someone told me about one time, and I looked it up. I've never seen this movie, but there's a 1968 movie called The Touchables. All right. This one's kind of funny. I clicked over, and I was reading about it. It says a British rock star with a love 'em and leave 'em reputation. The tables are turned when 4 cute young girls kidnap the singer. After a few days of craziness, the poor fellow is rescued by his friend. So I don't think it's streaming anywhere, but I did some research, and there is a 61 Lincoln Continental, and what was kind of cool is this movie was made in 68. It looks like it was the white car with the blue interior. So pretty cool stuff. Again, I'll be looking to try to watch it one day, but from the description that I've read, and I kind of gave you the PG version, seems like a crazy movie. All right, Smuggler's Blues update. So kind of piggybacking a little bit off Lincoln Life updates, my 64 Lincoln Continental convertible I call Smuggler's Blues. Not a lot of movement on it. I am patient. I'm waiting for my buddy to do the air suspension on it. It is going to have air suspension. That's what I want to do with that car. And I did purchase through my good friend at CS Metalworks, Chris. He worked with me to go and purchase some Universal Air products that I wanted. If you want to know more about those, you can go on our Lifestyle Podcast YouTube channel, and you can look up the OLP, right, for short, OLP Universal Air Unboxing. So I got a modular tank and a couple of water traps. I don't think the water traps were in the video, but that was kind of the icing on the cake. Those are some of the last things I needed. I did also get the levelers or the E-level sensors for each corner of the car. I had that on another car, actually 2 other cars in the past, and I debated about doing the pressure-based system. However, watching videos on AccuBear's YouTube channel, I decided to go with the E-level system again. I have a lot of friends that have had it with no issues, so that was also something else I recently purchased. But those are the only updates that I have now for Project Smuggler's Blues. Before we go over our last topic, talking about Roy Rogers Lincoln Continental, I do want to just give a huge shout out to all of the listeners. Again, I would ask that if you need parts, look at DeviousCustoms.com. He's got all kinds of cool stuff, from air suspension to just some ways to modernize your car. Colorado Custom Wheels, if you're looking for a billet aluminum replacement wheel, kind of a one-off wheel that mimics the factory hubcap. To me, they're the best in the business, coloradocustom.com. And then lastly, Steel Rubber, STEELE rubber.com. So there's a website, icollector.com. They kind of have a little write-up where they talked about that Roy Rogers had purchased this Lincoln Continental. It's a 65, used in 1965. This was his and Dale's driving car. This one they had taken around town, long trips between Apple Valley and L.A. The car was painted factory baby blue when Roy bought it, which actually could still be seen on the flapper. That remained so until he decided to have it painted a few years later. So we'll talk about that. There's an interesting story there. Now, speaking of that interesting story, there's a guy on Instagram that had mentioned this to me in the past, and I decided to look into it. And that's kind of what led me to doing this little bit of a deep dive and then wanting to do this episode of the podcast. And this guy on Instagram, it's LITRE number 7. He has a bio that says automotive history. And he posts a lot of cool stuff. Apparently he's got a ton of views over on different social sites. I think Yahoo's one of them, like Flickr. But he posts a lot of cool stuff, some Lincolns here and there. And he had mentioned this story to me, so I know it kind of is one that a lot of people know. But Roy had asked a family member, Pete, to take the car for a paint job while he was out of town. He instructed Pete to have it painted a pale gold color. So with its white top and interior, that would have made it actually a perfect match for Trigger, which was the horse, right? So Roy Rogers' Trigger horse that I think was on the show that he was on for a long time. What Roy didn't know is that Pete was technically colorblind, right, is the way the story goes. And basically the car, I'll share some photos of it, but if you ever Google Roy Rogers, ROGERS, right, Roy Rogers Lincoln, it'll absolutely come up. And you'll see that it's basically, you look at it and go, man, it's a yellow Lincoln. And one of a couple of photos, one is in the museum where I believe it sat a long time, and then there's some that are kind of in some desert-type settings. There's a few on Flickr. Barrett Jackson has a ton of photos, and just different websites, including icollector.com, where there was some pretty cool stuff that I had to reference. Now, what I wanted to do is kind of just talk briefly. I don't know a lot about Roy Rogers, okay? I know he's kind of American folklore, and, people love this dude, and he had a museum for a long time, and the whole Western stuff, it's not a thing that I'm really into, but I definitely appreciate it. Now, here's where I like to kind of dig in the weeds and go, hey, man, let's tell this story. So just a minute ago, I think I had said that it was a 65, so I want to be clear. It is a 64 Lincoln Continental, okay? So he bought it in 65. It was a used car. Now, here's the brief history on this one. So Roy Rogers purchased it from Frank Millard Sports Cars, Inc., in Apple Valley, California, on November 30th of 1965. Now, the original sales price, as far as my research, was $4,100 plus $164 sales tax and a $2 license title fee. Now, that'll kind of come in to play because we'll talk about how much that car went up. Now, Roy had paid $3,510 cash and traded in a 63 vehicle for $756 trade value. Now, I believe it was an MG. Don't know a lot about those cars, but we've all heard that term, MG. I'm not a historian on those, but I believe that's where he traded in. Now, I mentioned earlier it was a blue car, so that was the N code Platinum, light blue Formula 11683, technically. Roy asked a family friend, as I mentioned earlier, Pete, to have it repainted pale gold, but instead it ended up a gleaming canary yellow. The package tray is kind of the tell on it. because you will see in some photos it still is the original blue color. Now, for my research and based upon some of the first and second-hand accounts, the car was painted circa like 67 to 70. It was a few years after he got it. So that's kind of what I was able to kind of come to that conclusion. The other interesting thing is I've seen this before when someone takes one of these cars to get painted. And let's say the top's not working, or they're just like, man, you know what? We don't want to mess with the top. If the top is up and the car gets painted, especially if there's a color change, that flapper that we call it, the package tray, flapper, whatever you want to call it, that if you do not put the top down, that's not going to get painted. Okay? If the top is up, that flapper is in the tucked position against the deck lid inside, and you would never know that it's there. So someone could hypothetically, like they did in this example, they painted the car. The flapper package tray did not get painted. So in some of the photos you'll see when the top is down, you see the blue, and again, that's just the way it is. So that did, of course, happen. Now, it was put into a trust, from what I can tell, on November 27th, 81, and that could have just been like, hey, they're going to move it into, the museum or whatever. I don't know exactly why people do that stuff. It could be for financial reasons. It was also put into another trust, it looks like, again, August 27th of 1998. Now, here's the interesting part. So I mentioned, from what I could tell, it looked like he had paid $4,100 for the car, give or take, and the car was, new, maybe a little bit more than that, right? Because I think those cars were around like $6,500. So he paid $4,100. It sold. This is the intriguing part to me. On June 26th of 2010 for $17,000 US to at the Brian LaBelle's Old West auction in Denver, Colorado. So on the iCollector site, if you're jumping around and you're doing any research on this, or you're just intrigued like I am, you'll see it will come up on iCollector.com, and that's where you see the price of $17,000. Now, here's the interesting thing: the starting price, according to the site, was $15,000. Okay, and we're only talking 12 years ago. So these cars still, like, the Entourage movie show had been out, all that jive. So not that long ago. Now, it was estimated to take 30 to 40 grand, and for whatever reason, it was at 17,000. Okay, so you go from 4,100 back in 65. You add on 35, 45 years, then it's 17 grand. Still a nice profit for the museum, I believe, where it was at, or for his for the family, because he did pass away, and that might kind of tie into why it was put into the trust in August of 98, because if you look Roy Rogers up, he passed on July 6th of 1998 in Apple Valley. But basically, so it doesn't end there. So that's June of 2010, it's $17,000. And then you fast forward 12 more years, and you talk about an investment here. January of 2022, so just a couple months ago, it sold for $71,500. Now, the few other things I wrote down, except for the paint job and mechanical maintenance, the car was close to original. The odometer was just under 100K. And considering that it spent 3 years in 3 decades in a museum, those miles kind of were a testament to how much Roy loved to drive the car, and that's according to, of course, Barrett Jackson's site, the write-up, if you will. The car was in running order. It needed attention, normal TLC with brakes and things like that. You could drive it, restore it, collect it, whatever. It was in a great condition to be able to choose what you want to do. Now, included with the car was the registration, the original owner's manual. It, of course, was being sold as is. And there's a little bit of history that they wrote up on, Lincoln in general. So I thought that it was intriguing because of the story of how it ended up a different color. Also, the fact that he just loved this car. So, imagine in late 65, you buy a 64 used Lincoln. You save a couple grand on it. You put some cash down. Obviously he had the money. Traded in a 63 MG, which, as far as I can tell. And then he was off to the races, and he enjoyed that car from give or take 65. He owned it within his his world, if you will, over 30 years, which I thought was pretty cool. And talking about the Lincoln prices earlier, that's one example. Now, of course, Roy Rogers, his name's tied to this car that's going to obviously drive and elevate it, whether it's a museum or someone that's a fan or just, someone that loves pop culture, Americana. Those are all a couple of different, reasons on why that car may have shot up. But $71,500. And again, when you're doing a Google search on Roy Rogers Lincoln, you will see that it will pull up on Barrett Jackson's site. And this one was Scottsdale. There was no reserve, of course. And that, I don't believe, they kind of make you log in now to see the price, which is, just their way to kind of get you to sign up for their site and whatnot. But when you log in, it's $71,500, and that does include the buyer commission, I believe. So, give or take, that's a nice little profit. The car, to me, looked pretty cool, other than, obviously, the flapper needing to be painted. It did have the factory hitch, which is pretty rare. The seats had been pretty tattered, but I'd certainly say that they could be cleaned up. Underneath the deck lid, obviously, had to be painted as well, because it was not painted. You could imagine if the flapper wasn't, of course, under the deck lid was still blue. There was a little book that included, said Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, favorite personal car, 1964 Lincoln Continental convertible. And there is some paperwork there where, a lot of the information that I was able to, come up with came from. Looked like the price of the car was $41,000, as I mentioned, with tax, license, and title. Again, the license and title fee was only $2. It came to $42,066, and cool history, man. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I love these cars as much as maybe, if not more than the listeners, so I could talk about this stuff forever. I do want to thank everyone for the continued support. If you want more, please go out to Lincoln Addict on YouTube. I'll continue to post videos this weekend, actually in a few minutes. I got to wrap this now. My buddy's going to be here to pick me up. We're going to drive a few hours tonight on Wednesday. I'll be working on the road Thursday, and then I'll be off Friday for Southeast Mini Truck and Nationals, also known as Mini Nats, which is a truck show. There are cars as well there, and that's in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. So, as I said, trying to balance everything. Don't usually have a lot of time during the week to stop and do one of these, but I said tonight, damn it, I'm going to do it. Thanks, everyone. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Lincoln Addict, and, of course, as I mentioned, YouTube. Stay on the rise, and we'll hit you soon, I promise, with another episode of Lincoln Addict Podcast. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.